So our next presenter also shares the distinction that David Langston has of being a plant pathologist and IPM coordinator for Louisiana. So I give you Clayton Hollier.
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here. I remember early in my career, I went to a national meeting, and all the coordinators were there for the 50 states, plus Puerto Rico, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there were only 2 or 3 plant pathologists in the whole room. Most were entomologists, and there was 1 lead scientist, so we definitely were the minority. Coming at the end of a project like this, or a symposium like this, there are certain advantages and disadvantages. First of all, the disadvantage is that they've said everything you want to say, okay? The advantage to that is I can stand here and say, yeah, what they said, okay? So now we'll look at it from a Louisiana point of view. But I'm going to take a slightly different approach. All of them talked a lot about specific projects. One of the things that I want you to understand is my philosophy as far as IPM coordinator is that number one, our agents are educators and they're not consultants. So do they go to the field and do they scout for things? Yes, of course they do, because that's how they learn and that's how they know what's going on. The other part of this is that when I get EIP funding from NIFA, I use that for an IPM program, not for IPM projects. Although the reality is projects can be part of and are part of our program too. But anyway, we took a slightly different approach in this talk this morning, and I'm going to talk a lot in generalities, but yes, we start with history. The IPM efforts in Louisiana started back in the 1970s. I think David mentioned maybe 73 or so is when all of the money started coming in. And our first coordinator was an entomologist, extension entomologist. We did IPM work as coordinator as part of a job. Okay, there was not a full-time IPM coordinator in the state and never has been in our state for that. There are advantages and disadvantages of that. Number one, the big disadvantage is you have so many things that you're doing in your regular job, IPM sort of takes the back seat. And that's not really fair to IPM, but that's reality. As a plant pathologist, I'm dealing with agronomic crops, I'm dealing with the pathology issues of those crops, I'm trying to educate agents and consultants and growers and demonstrate how to do that. I have a research component too. All of these things are part of life, okay? But the IPM part, in essence, from the coordination, gets pushed aside. As I mentioned, it's not fair. Now, I can say, it's just part of my job, it's a hat I wear every once in a while, and leave it at that. But the reality is, we've got to look at this as a slightly different thing, is that everything that I do as a plant pathologist is IPM. I don't work in the genetic parts. I work in the very applied parts of plant pathology in my state. Okay, that's where I'm comfortable, that's where I feel the needs are. So what I do, and I recognize with many of my colleagues in the other disciplines, plus the agents who are out there doing this day to day, is what we call A&R agents, or Ag and Natural Resources agents. These people are doing IPM work constantly. So what we try to do is capture what they do as part of our IPM program, even though there may not be specific IPM money going to them for a particular project as has been demonstrated here this morning, or whether it's just part of the job. Nevertheless, let's move on. The emphasis from that time to the time that I took over was entomology or entomology issues. Fair enough. The entomologist did a wonderful job of working on these components and putting the programs together and dealing with the issues of the day. Not a problem. But what I noticed when I came in is that, wait a second, pathology's not even a thought. Weed science is even less. Could you believe that? Okay, but nevertheless, that we really weren't part of the program. So as I took it, I told my director then that, you know, maybe we need to be part of this too. We need to emphasize pathology more, weed science more, to have a complete integrated program, truly integrated program. Admittedly, much of the emphasis is still insects because there are many insect issues that occur in our crops as well as those of your locations too. But what we've done is we've really pushed for the pathologists to think about the IPM component, look at it in a management system rather than the what we always call the old spray and pray project. You know, okay, spray and pray doesn't work. We have to put it in as a teaching method, as a component, because all of this together is extremely important. So those disciplines were increased. The funding changes through the years, and you've heard some of this morning, but I've been around, say they've been around a few months, or 3 years, or 9 years, yeah, a long time, I understand, Tom, but I've been around longer. And so in 1996, I took this over, so we're looking at my 21st year. Yes, I still have a few hairs left. They are gray. Sanity's gone, but it's okay. You know, we keep plugging. But the thing about it is the money that we got in the early years were really earmarks. They came to us from the federal government. Money was sent to the states. The states utilized it in whatever way possible. The early money was general IPM, and as was mentioned before, cotton IPM. And actually, the cotton IPM component of this was much greater than the general IPM. Okay? We probably got $350,000 at that point per year. Most of that was cotton IPM. And most of that was looking at mold weevils and all the other things that were issues in cotton. It's understandable. That's where the needs were. So what has happened is through Congress, through NIPA, has decided that no, we're not just going to send checks anymore. We're going to make you compete. And so Tom and I were talking earlier this morning, you know, in the early years, if I said, Tom, I really, well, you wasn't here in the early years. Okay, back with the people I was dealing with in the early years, because you're all just children. But the thing is that when the money came and they said, develop programs, develop within the state and contact your colleagues in other states and let's put it all together. And we did a lot of that sort of thing. There was a lot of camaraderie, there was a lot of cooperation across state lines. Then suddenly Congress says, no, you're going to compete with money. Then the guy that was my cooperator now is the guy that I'm competing for money. It became a little less comfortable, shall we say. Okay? We're still friends, we're still going to do the work together, but suddenly I have to compete against Tom now. I have to compete against all the other guys. Okay? And so the competition, we've been through a few cycles now, we've sort of gotten it together about what we need to do when, and a lot of that depends upon regional concerns, but also state efforts. What are our needs? That's where you build your program. And so it meant that we have RFAs now. It means that we have program justifications that we have to do. Now, we've always justified our programs. There was a need. It was easy to do. But now with the justifications, they have to be stated in such a way that whoever's reviewing your project says, yeah, there is that need. So yes, that part needs to be funded. We have additional planning now. We always plan. Okay, but now we have to be a little more specific about our plan. We have to emphasize the USDA NIPA category, emphasizing those categories. Now, to be fair with NIPA, they make the categories broad enough so that we can fit just about anything into them. And then they have subcategories where we can be a little more specific. So that part really is not an issue, it's just you have to stay within that and define it that way. The multi-state, multidiscipline projects were emphasized. We don't want you spending your time and your efforts just in your own state. Wait a second, I'm competing against my neighbor, and now I have to play with them too? But the reality is the cooperation in projects and programs among the states has been and will be there because we see the need. And we're all friends. It's not like we have enemies in this. Part of the problem there, though, with the multi-state projects is not the science. It's not the design. It's not the implementation. It's the accounting. Accountants are horrible people to work with. I know deep down they're good people. That's not my issue, okay? But the problem is they have rules. And none of us really like them. And then the evaluation component has been emphasized. And that has been a struggle for us, quite frankly. In our group, every time we get together, we talk about how do we evaluate our programs and how do we tell our benefactors, which ultimately is Congress, what we've done and how we spent their money. Today's program for us looks like this. We have a greater emphasis on all the IPM disciplines. I think it's a fairly balanced thing. I'm going to say this, and I'm not being mean with it, but the weak scientists don't like to play with us as much as we'd like to advise them. Seriously, the lead scientists in our group do an excellent job. They really have issues to deal with, especially in resistance and these sorts of things. But the problem is that being part of an IPM program, they tend to like to work independently. You see that in your states too, yeah. And so it's not, again, it's not that they're not doing good work, they're doing excellent work, but it's bringing them into the fold and being part of their entire program has been a challenge. The things that we're looking at these days are things like the pesticide resistance. We've seen a lot with the fungicides, but it's going on in the insect and weed world too. Invasive pests. We talk about that every time we get together. There's always something new. The loss of products. Many of the products that have worked well with us for us and for several years suddenly they're not available anymore. The low-cost, less effective generic products. Now, by even saying that, I've probably put a target on myself. But the reality is what we found with some of our fungicides in particular, and it may be the same with the other disciplines, but we're finding some of the generics aren't nearly as good as some of the original products, even though they're advertised as being so, and being cheaper. The traditional snake oils, those are wonderful to work with, but we have groups that actually look at those things and evaluate them. You get the advertisement of, oh, you've got this wonderful mixture of fungicide here. Let's add my product to it and it'll make it even better. Get the results. The snake oil plus the traditional is no better than the traditional. If that's the case, why do I need to spend money on the snake oil? Why I don't have to stay with what I have? Okay? There's a lot of that out there. And of course, the proper understanding and use of IPM techniques. This is the emphasis of the program in all areas. And this is a program that looks at urban and rural. And what I'm finding is that regardless of what you find in popular media, the urban community is the harder of the two to work with in getting these IPM principles across and getting them used. I think the farmers understand. This is their livelihood. They want to do what's best for environment. They want to do what's best for their bottom line. Okay, but they don't, I don't think that they abuse nearly as much as is their accused stuff. And the reality is if you really look at home use of products, that's where the abuse is. And so getting them to understand what's going on and why we do it is a goal of the project. Our program improvements, well, we're revamping our IPM Louisiana website. We've always had the principles of IPM and some of this other stuff, but we're adding to it. So we're looking at the updating of images, image libraries, and we're connecting with those that already have good image libraries. We don't want to reinvent, we just want to connect and have it available for people. Ongoing projects, we're putting those on the line, and we're talking about our activities reports. What are our results? What are the publications? What have we accomplished in what we're doing? And of course, the contact information, and as has been mentioned, social media. That's not something we've used in this program, but it is something I think for exposure will help us. Tomorrow's program, we're going to do everything we're doing now plus. Isn't that the way? You do more with less? Okay, well, I don't know how much less we're going to have, but we're going to try to do more with it. But with help, we're going to continue today's programs. We're looking at the pollinator issues that have been mentioned this morning. It's a big deal, and it's getting bigger, and it's important. We're looking at a greater use of technology, use of UAVs, that sort of thing. It's time for us to look at that as far as IPM is concerned. We have a better balance, I think, and we'll have a better balance for rural and urban and the organic versus traditional. Those are areas that people are interested in. Those are areas that we have to address publicly. And if you want to put in all of that sort of thing, the GMO issues and that sort of thing, and bringing fact and not fiction, or gut feelings versus what really is in the science, that needs to be distinguished and brought forth. Food safety, and of course an area that is big in my heart, food security, and what I hope to do more in the future after retirement. And yes, I am announcing that for later in the year. No date's been set. I've changed it 3 times, so it may not even be this year. You never know about me. But food security, which is a global issue and one that I think we all need to be concerned about. That being said, I'll take your questions, your comments. Sounds like class, doesn't it, students? But anyway, I thank you for your attention. I don't know what the question is, but the answer is no. Go ahead. That whole thing is misunderstood, I think, by the general public. There are pros and cons, yes, with anything, and this is not any different. But I think part of IPM is being factual and being upfront with it. But it's going to be very difficult. What I found with the attempts that we've done so far with GMOs in particular is that or even pesticide use in a pesticide versus organic atmosphere. Take all of that and put it in the same pot because it's the same issues. Is that people listen to whatever their news source, whatever their source of information. And that's not always based on fact. It's based on feelings. It's based on many other things. And if I may give you an example, I gave this in my class the other day, and I will be brief. Do you remember years ago when the Alar scare came with the apple, use of Alar on apple, and everybody was up in arms about that, about its use and being transferred into products, especially baby food, okay? Well, there was an attorney, this was a meeting in Washington, D.C., 300 or so scientists in a room. An attorney for that group that was pushing against LRUs said we will use whatever means we had possible to get our message across. Now, their message was not based on fact, it was based on gut feeling, and come to find out that aloe that they said was a herbicide is really a ripener. And that's how it was used, and that was the unintentional thing. So I think our role is to put it forth. Whatever our feelings pro or con about an idea, we need to put it on the table and let people decide, but we need to put the facts on the table and let it go from there.